Okay, so I've had a lot of you guys ask me in the comments about what are my thoughts on the Lonzo Ball trade rumors that have recently come out. How accurate are they? Can you make a video on this? And I was going to address it in my video from earlier today on the Bulls weekly preview, and I thought it's probably better to just have this be as a separate video, as I have a lot of thoughts on it and I don't want to stray too far away from the Bulls preview of upcoming games this week. And because the NBA trade deadline is nearing closer, I imagine there are going to be more and more rumors that surface around trade proposals for the Bulls. So apologies if maybe it's a little too many uploads in a day, but I don't want to combine multiple topics into one. So what's going on, everyone? You're listening to Bull Central here. Hope you're all doing well. So as I'm sure most of you know by now, a report came out that the Bulls have made an offer to the New Orleans Pelicans for Lonzo Ball in exchange for Tomas Satoransky and a second-round pick. Now, mind you, this was reported by Kevin O'Connor from The Ringer, which I personally don't view as a credible source whatsoever. This was the same reporter that posted this article, and I say article in quotes because this was literally the whole thing, barely longer than a tweet, in which he claimed there were reports of the Bulls wanting to buy out Otto Porter's contract and that the Warriors were interested, which makes absolutely no sense if you're the Bulls, given Otto's contract is expiring. They've essentially already paid him most of that contract with just a few months remaining. And if, and I say that as a big if, you have teams like the Warriors interested in Otto, why would you buy him out so said team can pick him up for a cheap deal as a free agent as opposed to trading him for even minimal value so you can get something for him in return? There would also be no way Otto would agree to a buyout when he's on the salary he has right now for the level of play that he's actually producing. He's not going to want to take less money. There is no incentive for him to agree to a buyout. I actually made a whole separate video on this. I'll leave it linked in the description if you missed it. But in that video, I was very critical of the media spewing out these reports with no sources to back it up just to generate a few clicks for traffic. But anyway, so when I see reports come out like this from The Ringer, especially Kevin O'Connor, I'm always a bit skeptical because I think their reporting tactics are always a bit suspect, especially when they just say sources but never actually reveal said sources. But in any event, that's the trade rumor that was reported. Lonzo Ball for Satoransky and a second-round pick. Again, reported. It has not been confirmed that that offer has officially been made. Now, what I'll say about this offer is if the Bulls could somehow pull that off, Satoransky and a second for Lonzo, that's a no-brainer. That's a steal of a trade if you're the Bulls, because again, despite Lonzo being a restricted free agent, and I'll speak to that in a little bit, getting a 23-year-old guard who is a decent playmaker, a defender, something the Bulls really need, for only Sato, who, don't get me wrong, I like Sato, but he's not a part of the Bulls' long-term plans, and a second-round pick, which second-rounders are few and far between in actually finding a quality player that late in the draft. So yeah, you go for that, but there is no way the Pelicans agreed to a deal like that, which of course that's what the report is claiming, that they actually rejected that offer. The thing with the Pelicans and Lonzo Ball is that the Pelicans are in a very tricky place right now when it comes to trading Lonzo, because on one hand, there are teams who are reportedly interested in Lonzo, the Bulls being one of them. So it gives them a bit of leverage knowing there is interest and thus wanting to get the best offer in return for him. However, it's also possible they pass up on even minimal value offers for him. As more time passes and we get closer to the deadline, the offers don't get any better, and then they end up not finding a good trade partner for him, and then they're forced to match an offer sheet from another team when he becomes a restricted free agent, or they let him walk for nothing when they could have gotten something for value for him in return. What's also not in the Pelicans' favor is that it's been reported around the league that Lonzo has grown increasingly unhappy in New Orleans. And because teams know that, they're not going to offer a lot for Lonzo when they know they don't have to, and they could just simply wait for him to become a free agent to sign him without giving up any assets. Here's my thing about Lonzo Ball. If you're the Bulls and you're looking to make a trade for him, you have to go into it with the mindset that whatever you give up for him, you might lose for nothing. Because it's very possible some team is going to overpay him more than he's worth. So you have to be fully prepared to match any offer, or at least be okay losing assets that you traded for him. I honestly wouldn't be shocked if some team offers him over $20 million a year next season, which, let me be clear, I don't think he's worth that amount at all. But the reason I could see it happening is because I do think Lonzo's value around the league is much higher than it should be, given he has the Ball name and the media interest that he draws as a player. A franchise is going to be more marketable and likely better able to sell more tickets as a result. So that's why I wouldn't be surprised if he gets a fat payday. Don't get me wrong, he's a decent player as well. He's especially been, a lot better more recently than he did at the beginning of the season, but I don't see superstar potential, possibly not even an all-star appearance in Lonzo's future, and that's why I wouldn't be comfortable overpaying him. The only thing with Lonzo that doesn't sit well with me is that he just doesn't seem engaged. Now, you can blame that on him not being happy in his current role in New Orleans, but if you know me, I'm all about the high effort and hustle players that have a strong work ethic to get better no matter the situation that they're in. And I honestly just haven't seen that from Lonzo since he's been in the NBA. I mean, his brother already looks better than he does, and he seems to care more on the court than Lonzo. And he's playing in Charlotte, for crying out loud. It's almost like Lonzo has taken for granted the fact that he's one of the Ball brothers with all the media attention surrounding him, that he doesn't need to work as hard, as if his name sells his play for him. Now, to be fair, I haven't really watched a lot of Lonzo these past 2 seasons. I watched him play a lot when he was with the Lakers just because there was so much hype of him coming into the league, and I was thoroughly underwhelmed by his play. And in recent years, I've really only seen him play a handful of times outside of when he plays the Bulls, of course. But back to making a trade for Lonzo. If you're the Chicago Bulls, because the question is really, how much are you willing to give up for him? Knowing the circumstances of him being a restricted free agent this offseason, knowing his displeasure playing in New Orleans and thus the Pelicans not having much leverage, knowing that the Bulls need a playmaking point guard who can defend well, knowing that the Bulls are still building for the future and Lonzo is in his early 20s, with all of that in mind, you have to go into that. Now, I think the most I would be willing to give up is a lottery protected first round pick. Like I said, a package of Sato and a second rounder, that's a no-brainer. You do that in a heartbeat for the reasons I explained earlier. Sato and a first, I would prefer for it to just be a first round pick, but because Sato isn't a part of the Bulls' long-term plans and the fact that his contract next season is only partially guaranteed, I would be okay with including Sato, mainly because Lonzo fills that skill that Sato already provides and some. They're fairly on par when it comes to playmaking. Lonzo is probably a better defender and a better scorer overall. And of course, Lonzo is younger, with still some upside potential. But like I said, if the pick is a first rounder, it has to be lottery protected. Because the Bulls, although they're on a playoff trajectory, could still end up missing the playoffs. And the last thing you want to do is get a top pick or even get lucky in the lottery and end up with a top 4 pick and then realize you've traded that to the Pelicans. So they would need to ensure it's lottery protected. Otherwise, I would say pass and just wait until free agency, because if you're really high on Lonzo, you have the ability to sign him without trading away any pieces. And it also puts you in the driver's seat with him being a restricted free agent and not be forced to match the highest offer sheet that he's going to get. So if he ends up being too much, he's getting too high of offers from other teams, you move on and you end up having not lost anything for him in return. The worst case scenario for the Bulls is if you make a trade for Lonzo, let's say in this instance it's a first round pick, he comes to Chicago, plays around the same as he did with the Pelicans, some team offers him a ridiculous contract in the front office to save face and not show that they just threw away a first round pick for nothing, matches the offer, and then you're locked into Lonzo Ball eating away at your salary cap over the next few seasons. Oh, and you still lost that first round pick. So that's why I wouldn't offer that much for Lonzo, partially because the Pelicans don't have much leverage, and you have to only be willing to give up what you might end up losing for nothing if you can't retain him as a free agent. And according to reports, the Pelicans at a minimum want a young player or a first round pick. I think a first round pick is reasonable, but again, only if it's lottery protected for this year's draft. I'm honestly not inclined to give up, guys like Wendell or Coby for Lonzo. I think it's still too early to give up on those guys. And again, you run the risk of losing them for nothing, and I wouldn't be comfortable with that if I was Arturas. With all of that being said though, take these rumors with a grain of salt, especially if it's coming from The Ringer. For me, I'm always, the type of guy that's, I'll believe it when I see it. sort of thing, and we'll find out soon enough in the next few days when the trade deadline comes to pass. I would love to hear what you guys think though. What is the most you would be willing to trade for Lonzo? Let me know in the comments. Also, on a side note, the Jazz have listed Rudy Gobert as questionable for tonight's game due to a hip contusion, so maybe the Bulls can catch a break there. We'll have to wait and see. I'll have a live chat for the game either way, and as always, I'll have a live chat on the Discord. Link to the free Discord is in the description. Be sure to subscribe if you're a Bulls fan, as I post daily Bulls content. Thanks again for tuning in, guys, and I will catch you in the next one.